Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. This morning we have a very special guest with us. We have Dr. Randy Russell. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you today and can't wait to hear about what you're working on and some of the things that you've done.
You bet.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. And yeah, we look forward to you just sharing a little bit about your story.
yeah, you bet, Brad. Well, thank you. Well, I'm super excited to be joining you guys and really appreciate, Brad, all that you're doing to just support leaders and help us all. I'm excited, guys, going into my 37th year in education. It's hard to believe.
Wow.
Like many of us, right, started as a teacher and a coach and was fortunate to get into administration as a high school assistant principal, athletic director, and then served for 5 years as the high school principal in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, one of the prettiest places in the entire world. Um, Loved it. And for the last 13 years, now starting my 14th year, I've been the superintendent of the Freeman School District. We have about 850 kids. We're in a kind of the beautiful farmland of the Palouse, just south of Spokane, Washington. And gosh, I'm just super pumped about this year, our team, and serving kids and continuing this journey. My wife's a teacher, been a teacher for 30 years. We've got two daughters that are both educators. And then we have a son in college and one left at home. Riley is our youngest of four. She's a junior in high school. So I get to be in the same school district as my daughter Riley and our son Ryan when he was a high school student here as well.
Oh, that's awesome. It's a family affair, huh?
It is. It is. Yeah, my brother's a superintendent. My sister-in-law is a teacher. So it really is. Education is very important to our family. Very
Oh, that's
important.
awesome. That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
great. That's great. So I want to dive right in. I want to hear about your book. I want to hear about the three ships: relationships, leadership, and partnerships.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Yeah. So actually, guys, I wrote it as kind of therapy, to be quite honest. Um,
Yeah.
I was working with a group of leaders from Washington State, and we were getting ready to pull some of the different agencies together in the state of Washington, the WEA, the classified staff members, PSE union, our state superintendent of public instruction, our principals group for AWSP, WASA, which is our superintendent's group. So we had all of these agencies, including the State Board of Ed, and we were really kind of trying to navigate how to pull all these different views and perspectives together so we could be on the same page, right, to serve kids. There's 1.1 million students that attend public ed in the state of Washington. And we talked about what are some of those core concepts, that we needed across all the agencies and all the groups. And it really came down to relationships, right? Our connection with people, who do we know? How do we know them? Everybody's got a story, an important story to tell. And then it was around our leadership, that our leadership makes such a big difference, right? And like John Maxwell states, everything rises and falls with leadership. A good classroom, a good bus, your building, a school district, your sports team, a great band, all can be directly connected to really good leadership. And then the last part was the partnerships about parents and families, all the different organizations that support a school district, your community, your businesses, other school districts. And as we kind of talked about this, we said, well, God, what do they have in common? Well, they all have the ship part of it, right? Relationships, leadership, and partnerships. And so that's how the three ships was kind of born. And the therapy part of it was, I needed to have an outlet after having a school shooting in our school district. Unfortunately, we had a tragic event that happened, and it was horrific. It's still, almost 8 years later, we're still working through it, and this was a way to just be able to write and get some thoughts down on paper and figure out how do we kinda rebuild, this, and how do we work closer together to help support kids, and that's how the 3 Ships was born, and boy, it's been a blessing to have, guys, I'll tell you, I've really, really, and you know this, Dr. Brad, because 'cause you've written several. I think you're up almost close to 20, I think, books that you've written, and they're very therapeutic, and they've got a great story, and my hope was to be able to write it in a way that it would be helpful and impactful for as many people as possible, and so far, I'd say it's having a pretty good impact, and that's what the purpose of it was for.
That's so important. I think you hit on something. If it's therapy for you, it'll probably be therapy for somebody else too. So, when you go in it with that mindset, then you're probably going to, it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Thank
that
you.
I'm sorry to hear that with the district. That's a tough thing. One of my things always is leadership's easy until the storms hit.
Yep.
And, that's man, that's when you earn that role for sure.
Yeah.
And you carry a lot with you with that a lot of people don't really understand.
Yeah, that's for sure, Brad, and you're right, it's easy to lead when it's smooth waters, right? When the sails are running fine, but when your ship hits some bad weather, which it will, or, you have to kinda navigate some difficulties, which you will as a leader, or even when hit some rocks, which we did. I would say that our school district definitely, had some very challenging, rocky, times. And from that, we've learned a lot about ourselves, about our leadership, and you really see people's true colors, both personally and professionally, come out during tragedy, difficulty, those most challenging situations, and just super thankful for our community and our team because they really rose up to the challenge. And they said it would take us 10 years to rebuild our school district, and we were able to do it in 5. And
Oh,
I
nice.
think that's a huge testament to the people that are here. And our team has really stayed, Brad. A lot of times when you have something like this, your team leaves, or staff leaves, or kids and families leave. And we actually had more people want to come here, and our team has stayed together, and our board has been super supportive. And I think that's helped us be able to rebuild it as quickly as we have.
So the education community, they talk a lot about relationships and leadership, but it seems like those partnerships can take a back seat sometimes.
Mhm.
Can you speak on the importance of building these partnerships with the local community?
Yeah, you bet, Jeremy. Well, it's really about when you have a great relationship with people and they trust you, they also want to be part of a winning team. And so they're much more willing to jump in and help when they don't want anything in return. And I think that's what we have seen, whether it's, our partnerships here in Freeman with local agencies, or even, like our legislators have partnered with us, which can be challenging sometimes, right? Because legislators have a lot of things on the agenda, a lot of people pulling at them. And our legislators have been very supportive of our school district and education in general in the state of Washington. Thinking about businesses who've stepped up and helped us out. And the most important partnership that any school or school district has is the partnership with the student and their family. And that's where we've really tried hard to make sure we're very connected to parents, to grandparents, to people that live in Freeman. There's a lot of generational families that started here decades ago, right, as farmers. And, over time, a lot of the farmland has been split up, and there have been developments, but those families have stayed. And kids that grew up in Freeman who then left have now wanted to come back, raise their family here. And so we just want to stay really connected with our families and have a great partnership with parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, because they're the ones that are partnering with us to make sure that the student has the most incredible experience that they can have while they're here. And that's one of our big goals, right? We want every student to have an incredible experience while they're here in Freeman so that when they do graduate, they've got lots of options, lots of doors to be able to walk through. And ultimately, for those graduates who then leave, that we want them to come back and we want them to raise their families here and continue that tradition of excellence that we've had. And that's the most important partnership, Jeremy, is that partnership with the family.
Oh, wow. I love that. Oh,
Yeah, that's so true. Because my thought is when you think about it, the average child from, 4 or 5 to 18, they spend most of their waking hours in a school building.
They
And
do.
so, that has to be a place they want to come, that's fun to be at. And I know we're not, fun all the time, but I mean, it's a place they should want to be at. And, you know, getting the families involved with that is such a big part of that, where that they, um, were connected with the school. Because a lot of times that's the frustration I think we see, is when you don't have that partnership, nobody really knows. And, it allows for a lot of negativity to come in, or, the wrong message to get out. But when you have that partnership, like you're talking about, you know, communication is clear, the interaction, the relationships, and all, and just creates that environment, where kids want to be there and parents want them to be there and teachers want to be there. So, that's that's
Absolutely.
so important.
Yeah, it really is, especially in this day and age, right? Because students have so many choices. Many of us, we just went to school where our local school was. We didn't even have options. There weren't other choices. Nowadays, families have multiple options or multiple online options, as well as, just like a brick and mortar school to be able to go to. And so we, I think, have to step up our game, guys. We have to do a better job of serving kids and the families. And at the same time, we have to do a better job of taking care of the staff because we know that the pipeline for education has shrunk dramatically over the last 10 years. There's not as many college students majoring in education. There's not as many college students that want to become an educator. And as soon as the teacher pipeline shrinks, then the principal pipeline and the superintendent pipeline have shrunk as well. So we need to do both. We need to take care of the kids and the families and the staff. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of Freeman is that that's been a good lesson for me as a leader and a reminder that you have to be able to do both. I think for so much of our careers, it was really about, hey, let's do what's best for kids. Let's take care of the kids. And that's still the number one priority. We just have to know that taking care of the adults is also an extremely high priority.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, the one thing I always say is, the student's learning environment is the teacher's working environment. And so,
Yeah,
how they enter that classroom, whether they're engaged or not, whether morale's up or not, it impacts learning, and there's no other way around it. And so you can't really say we're doing best for the students if we aren't really focused on the
exactly.
staff and taking care of them and helping them, be their best. So I love that. I love that you have that balance. And that's probably one of the things that's helped you too. Did you say how many years have you been? 14?
Yeah, this is going to be the start of my 14th year, and Dr. Brad, that the the longevity for a school superintendent
Yeah.
is not
2 to 3.
very long. Yeah, 2 to 3 years,
2 to
and
3 years, absolutely. That's why I
yeah,
was impressed with that because we talk about teacher turnover and even principal turnover is high, but superintendent is the highest turnover just because of, the pressure, the politics and everything. It's just, yeah, it's a it's a lonely job and a tough
it
job, but
is.
yeah, there's just the turnovers just, it's hard to build consistency in a district when you do that too.
It is. It is. Yeah, we've been really fortunate. So our admin team, we have a group of us that have been together for quite a while. And over half of the leadership team, we've been together for those 13 years,
Nice.
which has really helped with just keeping things consistent. We can finish a lot of each other's sentences. We know what each other are thinking, which I think saves you a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're making decisions. And guys, it helps you when you are having to deal with some difficult things. This last year in education was probably one of the more challenging years that a lot of us have had. And, people's patience levels are at an all-time low. There's not a willingness to really meet in the middle and compromise on a lot of tough, challenging topics in our country, whether it's education or not. And so being able to have a group of people that you trust, that you admire, that you love and respect, like I do with our team, it really has helped us kind of weather some of those tough challenges and those tough storms that you're going to have in your career.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's such a good point too. Yeah, I mean, being together that long, it's kind of like a marriage or anything else, I mean, if you have turnover all the time, you don't build that depth. Jeremy and I always talk about, everything's almost surface level. It takes
Mhm.
time to build that depth.
It
And,
does.
but it makes a difference when you're able to, a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of joke, guys, that there's two reasons why you leave Freeman. One is you retire because a lot of people spend their entire career here, right? Like I said, we're a little bit outside of Spokane, so we're not a huge district. Most of our class sizes are, about 20 to 23, kids, K through 12th grade. So there'll be some more kids, obviously, at the secondary level. But the staff members that we have, they really know the kids. They build these great relationships with them, and so they stay for their whole career, or they get promoted. So that's kind of the one of the two reasons why you would leave Freeman. I know with our retirements here just recently, like John Hayes, he had been a high school teacher and coach here for us, phenomenal guy, awesome with kids, great human being, and he just finished, 35 years plus, as an educator. And another teacher that retired from the high school this year also, was at the 40-year mark. And I mean, when you're
Wow.
putting in 35, 37, 40 years in education, and for John Hayes, that was all here in Freeman. He started out of college and he retired. That says a lot, I think, about kind of the culture and hopefully what we've built for staff to want to stay here.
Right. Absolutely.
So I know that you do a lot of professional development and coaching. What qualities or characteristics do you focus on when working with leaders in education?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Jeremy. I think probably because we've got a little gray hair, right? Little little whiskers and some experience. I just really love working with people. I love working with teams. And so we've been really fortunate to do some great mentoring and coaching with admin teams, with superintendents and their boards. And right now, and Dr. Brad kind of mentioned this, there's such a turnover rate at the principal and the superintendent level that it's hard to get some momentum and it's hard to get some traction, for teams compared to those of us that have been able to be together for a while. And so we just like working with teams, especially helping superintendents know how to work with their leadership teams and their boards, because the superintendent's kind of the glue between those two groups. Um, and with the amount of turnover in the principalship, being able to provide great support for principals. So we've got a really great team, got a couple of retired educators, and then a couple of current serving admin as well that have kind of worked on our team to help do the mentoring and the coaching. And we just love watching people grow. We love watching people be able to get better, improve their skills. Because ultimately, when the principal gets better or the superintendent gets better, it has a direct effect on their team. And then the bottom line is that is better for kids. The kids are gonna benefit when they've got a
Mhm.
great principal, right? A district's gonna benefit when they've got a great superintendent. And so hopefully through kind of some of our learnings that, the things that have been successful, right? And we've had some things that in 37 years didn't go my way or didn't go the way I'd hoped it would too. That's just a great opportunity to share and then be able to provide that support. And you love working with people that want to be coached up. They want to be mentored, right? They want to improve their leadership skills, their abilities. And we've been fortunate to pair up with some great districts and some great teams. And we're starting to expand that because right now, with the amount of turnover, you're just seeing less and less people want to get into it. So you really need to provide more support, I think, for leaders in schools for them to stay in it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there is, people look at, what they have to deal with and go through, because I think probably a principal is one of the loneliest jobs there is because you're
Hmm.
trying to work between the district and then take care of your staff and students. And yeah, people see that and they're like, I don't think I want any part of that.
Hmm. Exactly, especially with some of the salary compression, Dr. Brad, as states have had to respond with higher salaries, as we should be for teachers, right, to entice them and to keep them. There's been this salary compression. And so a teacher will be like, well, gosh, if I'm going to make $110,000 as an educator and the principal is going to make 120,000 or $125,000, do I really want to go from a 180-day teaching contract to basically being on call every day of the entire school year, plus holidays and vacations, evenings and weekends? And a lot of teachers have said, I'm just going to stay put in the classroom.
Absolutely. It's like I'm taking a pay cut basically to add all that headache.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
who's going to want to do that?
I know it. I know it. We were fortunate that our two daughters, Emily and Megan, who both got into education, that they chose education. Our son Ryan is like, no way, I'm not doing that. I've seen what the teachers and coaches have to put up with. He's like, no, I'm going into the business world. So it's kind of funny to just watch how people respond to, do they want to be in education? Do they not want to be in education? And hopefully our youngest will decide that she still wants to do it because she's wanted to be a teacher since she was little. And I
Uh,
hope there's still enough excitement for her to want to do that when she finishes up with school.
So, looking back on your personal education, I'm sure that there are a couple of teachers that stand out. Can you tell us about those a little bit and how they impacted your own development?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Jeremy, I'm so glad you asked me that question because that's one of the questions I always ask everybody. I want you to think about your favorite teacher that you had and why they are your favorite teacher. And so it's ironic that next week I'll be at my 40th class reunion from high school. And so we're getting the old group back together back in Montana, where I was born and raised. And we have a teacher appreciation dinner on Thursday night. And Mr. Baird and Mr. Pond, two of my favorites, are both going to be there. And I remember that the way they made me feel as a young person, not just about myself, but about also my role in working with folks. Mr. Baird is the reason I actually got into education. When I was a sophomore in college, I came home for the summer. I was doing a baseball camp back in the Flathead Valley. If you guys ever get a chance, I would highly recommend going to the Flathead Valley in Montana and going and visiting Glacier National Park. Your life will be changed forever. And when I went home, I had lunch with Mr. Baird. And he asked me, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to Whitworth. I'm going to get my history degree, and then I'm going to go to law school. And without missing a beat, fellas, he said, no, you're not. And I said, well, what do you mean? I go, yeah, I'm going to get my history degree and I'm going to graduate and then I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to become a lawyer. He goes, no, Randy. He goes, you need to be an educator. You need to be a teacher and a coach. You need to be working with people. And so for the next 2 hours, all we talked about was education and the impact and the positive influence that you could have on young people's lives and all the impact of the teachers and coaches that I felt, right, as a young person. And he said, you will never regret going into education, and you will touch countless lives. And Randy, it'll be the greatest thing that you ever do besides hopefully getting married and having kids, right? Because I was like, what, 20 at the time, I think, when we had this conversation. It completely changed my whole career path. I went back, got a teaching degree, and I thank Mr. Baird every day. And so next week, I'm going to thank him in person at this dinner. And guys, and Mr. Pond was my English teacher. And I remember that my goal in junior and senior English was I wanted to get 100% in Mr. Pond's class because nobody had ever gotten 100%
Ah,
in his junior English class. And he had like 7,000 points that were that you could earn over the course of the year, right? And I remember that I had like 6,900 points going into the last assignment and one assignment to go. If I got 100 on, I was going to get 100%. I was going to be the first high school kid to get 100% in his junior class. And he was my tennis coach as well. Great guy, great human being. He gave me a 99 on the last
oh,
assignment. And it was a valuable lesson that honestly I've never forgot my whole life, right? And it's all about striving and giving it your best. And he goes, Randy, did you think you were going to get 100% or did you think that you earned 100% based on your effort? And he was right. I didn't deserve 100%. I deserved less than that. And that's exactly what he gave me. And it's a lesson, guys, I've never forgot my whole life. And so Mr. Pond and Mr. Baird, they are the best. I get to see Mr. Loeffler, Mr. McQuarrie, and a whole bunch of other of my favorite teachers. And I will actually, when we get a copy of this podcast, I will send a copy to both of them so that they can listen to this because they know I love them. I love these. They're like dads to me, and I just respect them. I admire them, not just because of how they treated me as a 16-year-old, but because how they treat me as a 57-year-old. And
hmm,
it's made a huge impact on my life. And I tell the stories all the time. And both of those guys are in the Three Ships book too. Their
hmm.
stories about both Mr. Baird and Mr. Pond in the book.
I love that. Yeah, what an impact and what a legacy. I think we sometimes in the middle of going through it all and the day to day, we forget the impact that we, as educators have on
Hmm.
students and their future. Well, I hope you take pictures with them and post them on Twitter
I will.
when you go too. Yeah, I'd love to see that. That's awesome.
I will. Yeah, they're fantastic people, and their wives will be there. I think we've got obviously some of the staff, is no longer, with us. Because if you get to 40 years, but what we found is the last time we did this, when we got together with them, they told us a bunch of stories that we didn't know from when we were in high school. And it's awesome. And, a lot of people will laugh, but like my high school principal would smoke right in the high school. I mean, there was no smoking section. Teachers smoked in the classroom. It was just a different time, right
Right,
back then.
right.
And so they tell us all these great stories. So we've always stayed connected, and I'm just really looking forward to next week.
Oh, that's so funny. You just made me have flashbacks to eighth grade. I was in high school, um, not middle school, it was high school, and there was a smoking area outside the gym. And I didn't smoke, but if you walk by there, you would see the students that smoked and the teachers out there smoking with them.
Oh yeah, yeah, they were sharing cigarettes back in the 70s and 80s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a little different time now, isn't it? It's certainly things have changed. A lot of great things, have changed and are in education nowadays. But you also want to be able to look back at the memories, and there's a lot to laugh about, and there's a lot to be very thankful for in the education that we all
Absolutely.
received.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what advice would you give to those in education that may be feeling the stress and the burnout?
Yeah, great question. In fact, we just had this conversation this morning, Jeremy, with our maintenance director and the CFO and I. So we've gotten to a point in time, I believe, gentlemen, where educators feel like they are 7-Eleven. They feel like they need to be on call, available, and open 24 hours a day. We definitely saw that during COVID for sure, and educators really stepped up big time to support families. And then what I think you've seen now is almost the second wave of that, where people are like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be checking my email at 9 o'clock at night, and maybe I should not be missing my kid's ball game, on a Saturday to grade papers. And I'm not suggesting that, we don't still keep working hard and, stay committed to our craft and our calling, because we should be. But I think you have to be very intentional, Jeremy, where and when you're going to take your breaks. And a perfect example is we went on a trip as a family, and our daughter, Riley, who's going to be a junior in high school, she said, Dad, say it isn't so. And I said, well, say what isn't so? And she goes, Mom told me that we're not going to have internet or cell service on this trip. And I said, I'm saying it's so. I said, we're not going to have cell service or internet service during our family vacation. It's completely off. We're going off the grid for like 5 days. And guys, I had never done it in my life, never done this in my career, but I needed to. And my wife said I needed to. And what we found during that 4 or 5 days of not having internet and access to cell service was we just reconnected as a family. We had conversations. We were playing a lot of cards. We were watching movies together. We were going on walks together, things that sometimes when you just get so busy that you almost take for granted. And I think that's happened to educators. And so we need to give permission to teachers and to principals. You don't have to answer an email at 9 o'clock at night. You don't have to work all weekend, and make sure that you put in some very intentional breaks in your schedule so that you can stay focused on your self care, your mental, social, emotional, physical, spiritual well being, and to really be in tune to where your feet are, right? If that's with your spouse or your significant other, if that's with your children, and I think we stay sharper. I think we're better leaders. I think we're better educators when we're not on call 24/7, like a 7-Eleven store is. And I think for the people that have done that, and I have to remind myself to do it more often, right? Which is a little more difficult as a superintendent because you really kind of are on call 24/7. But the school district still operated, everything still went great during those 5 days of going dark. And you know what? I've got a great team, and we all have these great teams as leaders. So that's my biggest, suggestion is really pay attention to those times where you can separate it, so you can be your best when you need to be an educator. And then you can also be your best when you just need to be a husband or a dad or a friend. And don't try to mix the two if you can help it. I don't
Oh,
know,
I love
Dr.
that.
Brad, what do you think?
Oh no, I'm with you on that 100%. I mean, one of the things I share is there's no work-life balance, there's just life. And
Yes.
but you have to make those choices to understand that, at work you're replaceable pretty quick, not
Hmm.
as quick with the teacher shortage now.
Yes.
But you're not at home, and so you
Yeah.
always have to keep that perspective. And I even like to share with administrators that you can tell your teachers to do self-care, but teachers are wired to be affirmational. They have the guilt if they do. They feel like they've always got to be doing. I'm like, you have to model it. You don't just tell them, you have to model it too. You have to take the time off. You have to not send emails after 5, because
Yes.
you can think, oh, I'll send it and they don't have to check it, but they do.
They
That's
do.
how they're wired. I'm like, write that email, but then wait till in the morning to send it. And,
I
just
love
things
that.
like that intentional perspective of it, like you're talking about, that you just have to set aside that time and stick to it, because the world's not going to end.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're so right on, Dr. Brad. You've always had such great wisdom, which I've really appreciated. And I think just having some perspective, I think maybe when you do have a little bit more experience, and you do have a few more years under your belt, of being able to share that perspective without like telling anybody how to do it. it might be difficult to be able to explain that to a third year teacher or a second year principal. But there's a lot of expertise and a lot of insights that can be shared. And I think we need to continue as experienced leaders being able to share those insights, that experience, some of that great advice to help folks so that they can learn it a lot earlier than we learned it, and they can be a lot better at it than when we were doing it for the first time.
I think that's so key. And that really is one of my intentions. And, you really hit on it. And I don't really speak about it that way, but it really is. My goal is, to help people learn stuff quicker,
Yeah,
earlier than I was able, and to save
yeah,
them, a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of stress that they, really don't have to. So that's a great
absolutely.
point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I think we have just one tough question left.
Yeah.
So this is lattes and leaders. So what
Mhm.
is your hot beverage of choice? Is it coffee, latte, cappuccino, tea, or nothing?
Yeah, great question. And I love your title for this. I think it's just awesome. So I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I
Oh,
love the
wow.
smell of it. And I remember as a young child, my parents would always brew coffee on the stovetop, right? And it went all through the house and I loved it. But I've never had a cup of coffee because I think they can only handle me like I am. Like if you had me on coffee, right, it would be like too much for people. And so my hot drink of choice is hot chocolate. Love like
Okay.
a caramel
Good.
hot chocolate or something in the morning. And our high school students have the doghouse here at Freeman, and so they make drinks. They take orders and they send them out to staff, and students can go get them. And nobody makes a hot chocolate. They're even better than Starbucks. And nothing against Starbucks, but our high school students know how to make a mean hot chocolate. I'll tell you that.
Oh,
That's my
that's
favorite
awesome.
drink. Yeah. This has
That's
been
awesome.
awesome, guys. Thank you so much for having me. What a real treat. I really appreciate you guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a great time talking to you this morning, and just loved your insights.
Thank you, Jeremy.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.